Greetings, my brothers and sisters. There's a political storm brewing in our community today. And here with your political weather report is the urban politician.
Welcome to the Black Dot Culture Center. I'm Kazemide Ajamu, and I want to thank each and every single one of you for coming out. Today's lecture is hosted and brought to you by Good Deeds International, a Heritage Ball 2018. And what we'll be discussing today is today's cultural politics. Are we being culturally incorrect? Normally, I stand before you and I speak for an hour, talk. Last year I changed it up and want to be a little bit more engaging and have a discussion instead of just me talking. And then each one of us get to participate because each one of us brings something to the table, especially in this cultural arena, and particularly in the politics. I also usually have a poem or a fable to say. I'm going to skip that today with one statement. Politics is the management system of our economy. Politics is the management system of our economy. In other words, our community. And each and every single culture in this country practices cultural politics. And I think that we're seeing it now more than ever. Right? We can talk about white nationalism, we can talk about all these different things. It's nothing more than cultural politics that's been going on. Sometimes subtly, sometimes in our face. Asians practice it, the Jewish people practice it. And what they have that we have yet to develop is a black political ideology. And within that black political ideology, you can have a conservative perspective and a liberal perspective, and independent. Because typically what happens during election time, no, let me rephrase that. 2016, the media gave Donald Trump $8 billion worth of free advertising. Hillary Clinton, $4 billion. Bernie Sanders, $3.3 billion. They pretty much told us what to concern ourselves with because we were bombarded. So we got in one camp or another, and our ideals, our policies became theirs, the larger societies, to the exclusion of what's important to us. And we all know those things. So part of this discussion is, there's some people here from Detroit, Chicago, Omaha, Baltimore, Atlanta. Where are you from, Richard, sister?
South Carolina.
South Carolina, Chicago, San Diego. All politics is local. You have to start there. In each community, we have different needs and wants. If in South Carolina, I don't know if it's a rural or a city, but a rural black community have a different need than Chicago South Side, right? So we have to start from the basis of that. Being in the suburbs of Detroit is quite different than being in the city. There's different needs. So what I'd like to do is, while I'm talking, is for each and every single one of you to come up with a bullet point on what's important in your community from a political perspective. If you can change any one thing or rally behind any one thing, what would that be? And we use that as a basis point to build on, because we got to create it. What is a black political ideology? I don't think any one of us can answer that because we haven't developed it. So we start developing it by putting ideas on the table. It can't just come from me. I live in Lithonia. This is my world. And here, we practice a political ideology. We go to the city council meetings. We engage in local politics. And we hold our local politicians and police chief accountable for their actions. That's what we do. And it's not coming from the elders, it's coming from the young people. I'm talking about 20, 30s, under 40, showing up. Again, all politics is local. So every business up and down the strip is a black-owned business, right? We all want to go on business. We all want to support black businesses, grow a black economy. There's a big push for that. But unless you create a political paradigm around that for which it can flow, it doesn't. For example, here in DeKalb County, in order to get a business license for a restaurant, the fee, you're charged a fee based on how many seats you have in that restaurant. So one or two things happens. I can't afford to get a business license because of the amount of seats, or you start off lying about it, just to get a business license. That's politics. We control that, not the politicians. We control that. But because we're not engaged locally in what's taking place, we have no idea about these ordinances or these laws that affect our daily life. How many schools have closed down in cities? Detroit, Chicago? That's local politicians, that's politics. Local council, the city council determines what schools close. In murders, when you talk about police killings, who appoints the police chief? The mayor. Who votes that police chief in? The city council. It's not the governor, not the president, it's not the Senate, U.S. Senate, or the House of Representatives. We're asking them, please do something, when we have the control right in our own backyard. So, I'm going to sit and we're going to start discussion, because I think it's better to have a discussion if we're all on the same level. And then we can talk about how do we develop and what are some of the things in your local area, so we can throw this in a pot and flush it out and discuss how we move forward in creating this. Because in 2018, what we all know on a federal level, and I'm going to skip to the federal level, is we all want the Democrats to take back the House and the Senate, so they can put Donald Trump in check and or impeach him, right? So what we're going to ultimately end up doing is voting just to do that. So we're playing defense. We're not being offensive, playing offense. We're not getting something back in return, because the Democrats know they need our vote. Alabama, look what happened in Alabama this year. It was a black vote that got that Democratic senator in office. What are we getting in return for that? Right now, he's hired a black chief of staff. I think we need more than that, right? I think the people in Alabama need more than that. But we'll see what happens. So these are some of the things that we have to think about. What do we want in return in 2018 and 2020 to deliver what they so need? Or are we just going to continue to vote based on their needs and our community still suffering? And it's a vicious cycle. Pretty soon, our children are dealing with it, and our grandchildren are dealing with it, and their great-grandchildren are dealing with it. We've been dealing with this since 1895, when South Carolina had a majority black legislation. And every time black people rise up in any kind of political, economic power, so does white nationalism. They stamp it back. And they create laws in order to prevent that from happening. We had Du Bois and Booker T. Washington and Marcus Garvey, that today, those three political ideologies, Du Bois was, don't give up what they gave us in terms of any civil rights legislation that went on at the time. Let's go forward. Booker T was like, whoa, we really don't need you. We need to build our own, right? So you go do your own politics, and we're going to get here, get our hands dirty, and we're going to build our own economies. Du Bois and Booker debated with each other, and we fell in one camp or another, when actually both of them were saying the same. If you understand football, if your offense isn't kicking in, you play defense until your offense kicks in. But the offense must kick in, is that correct?
Right.
So we can't just play defense and never play offense. You can't win that way. We've been playing defense for over 100 years, never on offense. And that's what has to change in order to change what goes on in our local communities. So, from that perspective, before I finish, Marcus Garvey kind of put it all together. Marcus Garvey was nation building, building black businesses, but he also understood that politically they had to have a political structure in which to grow, but they shut that down because you have one movement. One thing I learned about young people today, a lot of us elders say, they're leadership movements. Did we ever ask why they have leadership movements amongst the young people today? Because they seen my generation, generation before us, the heads get cut off, and the movements fell.
Right.
They learn from that. So we need to understand why they're doing what they're doing. Politics needs to be done the same since it's locally. Each local community builds on its own. And once we all get moving forward, now we can unify around state, regional, and U.S. government policies. So would anyone like to first speak out about what's important in their local communities?
Quality goods and services.
Quality goods and services, that's universal, right? We all need that, we all need to stress that. So who are we looking quality goods and services from? Ourselves or from politicians?
Ourselves.
Ourselves? Yes.
Collectively.
Collectively, and then how do we hold them accountable? How do we hold politicians that serve us accountable?
Participating in local government activity.
Definitely, definitely. That's a start. Sister?
Well, I'm from Lithonia, like not born but raised. Better education systems and like after school activities. So I'm relatively young. I'm in my 20s. I remember when I was coming out of school, if I didn't have band, me and my friends would get in trouble because there was nothing to do. Now in the area I live in Lithonia, or used to live in, we got a lot of young dudes kicking doors in and stuff like that because they don't have anything to do. Just as well as young ladies, it was just two young ladies, bodies dropped off right behind Walmart and Panola. They don't have anything to do after school. They don't have any positive things to do. So like they're getting in trouble, and then the schools aren't even good compared to the north side of the cab. Like for example, Druid Hills IB program. MLK is an IB program, but it's only this much of us. Because I graduated IB, it was only this much of us compared to the people who were like underperforming this many. Teachers kind of don't care because they're not getting paid right. They're not getting the proper support. So we just need an overall better infrastructure as far as public education and access to things like community centers, after-school activities, and stuff like that.
So we know we need access to, first, better public education, but community centers and things. So basically what you're saying is that there's a void. There's nothing to do once young children get out of school, right?
Because people
So-
can't afford, their parents, didn't mean to interrupt, but their parents can't afford to do after-school programs because they're taxing. Like, and I understand why, because they don't get the same type of grants you get in North Decatur. Like North Decatur, you can get a $5,000 grant just for operating a certain type of after-school if you accept CAPS and stuff like that. They don't really get the money like that over here, because I worked in systems over here like that too. Like, Bowie Elementary, we had Camp Firebird, we didn't get that.
How do you politically attack that?
We have to, I guess it's more so publicly educating everybody around who operates type of centers like that, and then we have to demand that. Because we
Okay.
still pay taxes just like everybody on the north side.
Exactly. So, I'm certain that you're not the only one in Lithonia who thinks the way that you think,
I know I'm not.
right? Now, but I'm also certain, and this is not a knock on you, right? Let's just keep it real. I go to enough city council meetings here in Lithonia to know who's there and who's not, right? So what happens is you have elders that are going to the city council meeting, and you have the business community, right? So elders are complaining about the noise from the amphitheater. That's all they care about. So now the city does, they're voters. So the city's saying, how can we lower the levels down, right? But they're not hearing your voice, right? Because guess what? If there's grants for as money trickles down from federal to state, the city, whatever county, whatever North DeKalb can get, South DeKalb can get. But South DeKalb's not asking for it. Okay? And then even when they do, if you're not at the city council meetings with your politicians on how that money is getting spent, that money is going every place else. Understand this, the tax dollars that you pay, you mentioned tax dollars. The political battle between Democrats and Republicans is how that money is being spent. Our money is being spent. So we don't show up, we can't hold them accountable to how they spend money in our own community. So and it doesn't take a lot, if 3 or 4 people your age came to city council because you can sign in and you can get to speak. And you speak your truth, and you have other people there, and you come back to the next month, I guarantee you, the city's gonna start to move and get grants. When they do get that grant money, they're gonna use that grant money for what the community wants. Because right now, they just think about building rising things in the park. We need more than that, right? So that's just an idea of how we engage. Because we know the problems. The problem is we're not engaging. And that's the purpose of this discussion is let's move from what the problem is to an actual engagement, right? And then holding them accountable. Sister?
In reference to what she was saying about the education, I'm in the DeKalb County school system. And what do we have to do to get our parents to attend PTA?
Oh, that's.
What do we have to do to get our parents to attend parent-teachers conference? Now, the child has a cell phone, a smartphone, and you take the phone. The parent is there within 5 minutes of the phone being confiscated. But if you call them for a conference about their behavior and their academic ability in the classroom, they'll never show up. So when we have parents-teachers conference, and when we have PTA, we have hardly any parents there. So a lot of things could be done if the parents just participate. So now they want to start doing this parenting program to teach these parents how to be parents. Because now all of them want to be their friend. And they have so much behavior now in the school, it is just crazy.
So there's another problem, and that's pretty much in every black community in the country where parents aren't showing up
Right.
at these teacher conferences, right? So how I think, right, how I look at this situation is parents have checked out. Why? Right? Why have they checked out? Why do they not feel it necessary? I mean, we have the obvious reasons, their life, work, they don't care, but I think it's more of a deeper level on why they checked out. Were they feeling at some point, this is a question that I'm asking, at some point, did parents feel like the schools, not the teachers, but the system didn't care about them, didn't care about what really happened? Well, where's the disconnect? And do we need to change the paradigm? Do we need to approach this situation quite differently? For example, 10%, 65% of black-owned bookstores have gone out of business in the last 10 years, right? So, is it the fact that we stopped reading? No. Is that we haven't shifted into a different model, right? Young people still read, and we can attest to that because 80% of the people who purchase books out of here are 35 years old and younger. So we know that they're reading, right? Children in elementary school, every day we see them coming here and go to those books and their parents are buying them books. We know they're reading, right? So what's different? The difference is we created a cultural center that gives a lot of different things, and by virtue of doing things like this, some of you are going to buy a book or buy something here today. You come here for a lecture, but you're getting something else. So is it time to be a little bit more innovative, right, and coming up with different platforms in order to engage parents and teachers on a different level? Because that model, obviously, because since I was a kid, I heard the same thing. Parents, you know, maybe more so than now, but parents weren't showing up at PTA. So we've been fighting that battle for 50 years and longer. So at what point do we say, we got to do something different? We got to create a different scenario to engage parents. I could use the same thing here in Lithonia. You have residents, the population is 2,000 people. In the last mayoral election, you only had 181 people vote. Why? Now, we can sit here and say, black folks don't vote and blah, 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 but there's a reason why those people checked out.
Right.
They checked out because they've probably been voting for decades and nothing changed, right? So if nothing changed, why are you going to keep doing that? Why waste your time? My reality stays the same. So we have to find, and I don't know the answer, what we can create to get parents and teachers to engage, but I think it's time to change and go a different direction versus continue to beat that dead horse that we already know isn't working.
Can I
add
Yes.
on to that?
This is a discussion.
Yes, I worked in the education system in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I wasn't formally a teacher, but I was a teacher assistant. So I also had to, and I worked with special education children as well. So sometimes I had to substitute teach, but I was also the go-to person for all the bad kids. So this is what I found out, how I got some of the parents engaged, was that I created a positive relationship with their children, and I talked to the parents. When the parents saw that their kids were positively responding to me, and then I would talk to them like I talk to you, and as a friend, as family. So I think what's missing, what I see in the education system, is a lack of just communicating positively with the parents, making them feel like they're a part of the educational process, making them feel like a family or a friend. You know what I'm saying? That human interaction, that human connection is very important. So I'm not saying that you don't do it, but I'm thinking that how do you take that, right, and then kind of expand on that?
Right, to expound on what you were saying, in reference to us trying to get more family oriented with our parents. The parents have to also provide us with the correct telephone numbers. And if you get your phone number changed, you need to let the school know this. And when we call, answer our calls and answer our emails. A lot of parents, they don't even reach back to us to communicate to us what's going on. If we knew a lot more what's going on in their household, maybe we can help a little bit more.
Now,
I think,
have another
if I
question.
may,
Oh.
I think that that's why this is so important, this kind of discussion, because these same discussions again have been going on and on and on, where it's like what comes first, the chicken or the egg, right? We know what parents aren't doing, right? We can talk about the feelings that we're not getting from the school system, not maybe necessarily individual teachers, but we know these things, and we can go on for the next 10 years, and I don't mean to dismiss what anybody's saying. So what I've learned, particularly with us, and I was in sales, I was in mortgage banking 20 years ago, and I had black real estate agents that I got business from, and I had white real estate agents that I did business with. I never had to go see the white real estate agents. They just call you up and say, I got a deal for you, you do the deal. I never had to see them, right? But with my black real estate agents, if I didn't come visit them, it was over. It was a wrap.
Right,
We are relationship building people.
right.
We have to feel your energy. If I'm not feeling your energy,
Yes.
I'm not dealing with you.
Right.
That's who we are, right, as a people. So, again, it's connecting those dots, because what I hear is a disconnect, right? Is your point is valid, and so are yours, because you're coming with both things are
Right.
happening. So the question is, how do we correct that,
Now-
right? You gonna say something?
Yeah, I was gonna chime in whenever you're ready.
Yes.
I agree with what you're saying, and what I believe is we're having an omni experience. It's like you said, we're relationship based. We're dealing with energy, and all of these different problems are very valid because we're all experiencing these things. What ends up happening is all of our ideas are very linear. So trying to find that beautiful space, that balance between a linear idea, which is how do we get people to show up to PTA meetings? How do we get funding for the schools? Where do we allocate our money? All these things are very valid, but yet individually, like you said, we individually have to be part of the whole solution, and we're very much disconnected with ourselves. And I speak about this all the time. It's like your cells, but you also your cell. So if you think about the cells of your blood in your body, collectively they make up your body. But each cell is very important. So how am I going to connect with my teachers whenever I don't even connect with myself? How I'm going to connect with my husband and wife, my children, where I don't know how to connect with myself. How I'm going to connect with politics in the community where I don't know how to connect with myself. And if I'm not connecting with myself, that leaks over to my economics, my relationships, my marriages, which then now that leads for dysfunctionality when it comes to dealing with issues on a community level or on a national level. So I think maybe in terms of dealing with how do we solve these issues is personal development. How do we personally get a better relationship with ourselves and not shut down every time somebody says, what's going on with you? That you're attracting things that don't serve you, your family, or community. What's going on with you? And so I think it's more of a ourselves type conversation first. Then we can become more collectively engaged.
And well, one has to, you have to start with self. I'm a firm believer that we have many issues in the black community. If each one of us took on something that was near and dear to us, right, and moved in that direction, then you walk in your purpose because of something that's near. And as you walk in your purpose, you start to feel better about self, right? And then it becomes a collective. So that is certainly a way to move. How many of you, or if any, have worked in city government or state? City government?
Yeah, I work for the city of Markham.
You work for the city. Okay. Markham is larger than, Markham is right outside of Chicago, for those that don't know. Markham is larger than this town of Lithonia, but it's pretty much the same demographic, right? I don't know what the median income is, but the median income here is like 28,000, right? So it's about the same, right? So from where you sit, right, is there a how does the lack of community involvement, how does the politicians react? That's not what I want to ask. Because of the lack of community involvement, the politicians are pretty much doing as what they think should be done,
Correct.
which most times doesn't serve the community, it
Correct.
serves everything else. Is that your experience?
Yes.
In that? And how would you see more community involvement impact those same politicians that you serve or you work for?
Say that again?
If the community involvement, if you had a larger community involvement in Markham, do you think that those same politicians would respond and react differently to policies within Markham?
Would they respond differently?
Differently, with different type of policies? Would they be more community orientated? Do you think?
Right now is a little dysfunction because the current mayor there was indicted for kickback, so
Sounds
it's
like Lafayette.
so it's a little dysfunctional right now. So it's it's a lot of seniors in Markham, so they are very involved. It's
Okay.
just that you have an alderman and the mayor right now that have other agendas.
And that
And they're trying to
typically
serve themselves.
serve themselves, and that's typically what happens.
No, go ahead.
That typically what happens is, and I think that we kind of saw that here, is that the politicians here have their own agenda. And their own agenda was formed because there was a lack of community involvement. And then when the community started getting involved, and Steve can attest to that, there was strong pushback. They weren't used to the community and used to us coming up there saying, why are you doing this? Or how come this didn't happen? Or why did you shut down the street for a movie and you didn't let the businesses know? They were looking at us like, who are y'all? And how are you to tell us what to do? But you have to keep fighting. Like some people can give up and say, I'm not fighting. But you have to keep fighting because eventually, right, you get what you want. And if not, you vote them out. Well, him next and then you, Bobby. Eventually you vote them out. See, that's the key. Because one thing all politicians are afraid of
It's getting voted.
is getting voted out, right? And the minute that they see that there's a movement moving against them, they're either going to be accountable or they got to go. Plain and simple.
So your culture is your politics, right? And until we can admit that we are basically a dysfunctional people, and this dysfunction is based off of the relationship we have with the United States government. From the onset, it's dysfunctional to kidnap people, take them to a foreign land, miseducate them, don't give them nothing, and then expect them to be something. That don't make no sense. And then for us to expect them to do something for us is dysfunctional. And so the sister right here talked of being a teacher, and she cannot understand how the parents aren't involved in education. You know why? Because that is dysfunctional. Not to go to the place that you send your kid to for 8 hours. 8 hours out of a day, your child goes there, and you can't even pick up the phone or look at the email. It's dysfunctional. It's dysfunctional to go to the Black Panther movie in droves. Families went. We all went. My family went. We all went. But you forgot you didn't go to the school. We out of order. It's out of order to support the Black Panther movie, but yet don't support the school that could get your kid an education that would allow them to produce a movie that will change the way we think. So since we just dysfunctional, but the first key to being undysfunctional is to understand that we are dysfunctional people. This room should be filled talking about politics. So the question for you is, which side should we pick? Should we pick the Democrats? Should we pick the Republicans? I'm saying we should pick those who decide to work with us. I'm not picking, you're the same government. One side say to the Democrats, we know the Democrats was the most racist starting out. Remember that? Most people don't know that. I'm not picking those sides. I'm picking a side that we all agree that's going to change what we need in our community, but it starts with us. There can be no mistake about it that we are dysfunctional, and now we have to start taking personal accountability. So for you, sis, I suggest you start knocking on some doors. See, you said we community-based. We need to change the way we do things. Start knocking on doors. I am such and such teacher. Now take somebody with you now, though. All right? Take somebody with you. I am your son's teacher, such and such, and I just want to say hi. I'm here to help you. So we can't depend on them to show.
Let me answer your question too in terms of which side do we pick. I want to step back and say, from the start, the OnStar, we're not selecting our politicians. Those politicians are being selected by someone else.
No, it should be Republican or Democrat.
I'm getting to your question, right? So we have to begin based on whatever ideology, whether it's Republican or Democratic, we have to begin by selecting and educating and putting forth our own politicians. Because what happens is someone is going to come to Bobby and they're going to say, I got a couple $1 million behind you, I want you to run for office, and I'm a back. And that person does an exploratory commission, but part of that $2 million decide if they can win. This is the process, right? So they create their platform, and then with another part of that $2 million, that platform is being broadcasted us through the waves. And then we say, okay, that politician seemingly is talking about what we want, or not what we want, and we start fighting. But what we never do is we never sit down and say, us, let's say we all lived in the same town, right? And we say, Bobby, we think you should run. We think you represent us. We know that you represent us well, and we're going to put the money and the political backing behind you to run. At that point, it don't matter whether Bobby is Republican or Democrat, right? What we know is Bobby represents our best interests. We're the body. Bobby speaks through us and for us. What happened back in Obama's, I'll give you an example. What happened back in 2008 during the primaries when Barack Obama was running. 90% of the Congressional Black Caucus backed Hillary Clinton. They didn't know who Barack Obama was, even though he was in the Senate, right? Most of us didn't know who Barack Obama was. I happen to know because I lived in Chicago when he was a state senator. And because I don't just watch politics during elections, so I've heard that name over and over, so I kind of knew what he stood for. So on Super Tuesday, in that same primary, Barack Obama wiped Hillary Clinton out in most places, if you remember. You remember that? And Al Sharpton has his radio talk show. So what I did was I went online, and do you know, after day after election, you can see what each district in America, all you got to do is pull a district up where you can find out how that district voted, right? It's all public information. So I'm going down the Congressional Black Caucus, Maxine Waters, all these names, and I'm seeing, because they endorsed Hillary Clinton, I'm seeing how did their districts vote in that primary. And they were voting for Barack Obama. Yet, these same politicians continued to endorse Hillary Clinton. They weren't speaking for the community at that point. So the very next day I called Al Sharpton's show. And I mentioned to him that these districts Congressional Black Districts was continuing to endorse Hillary Clinton, even though Barack Obama overwhelmingly won those districts. He said, where did that happen? That didn't happen. Name one. I said Maxine Waters. He said, that's a lie. They hung up the phone. Just like that. On the radio. On the radio. Right? So I said that to say, we have politicians that we voted into office, and because we don't hold them accountable, they are going off and not following our interests. That's like me giving you $1,000 and saying, do what you want, and I don't have to get nothing in return. That's what we're doing, because we're not selecting. If we get in the business of selecting, it won't matter what party. You understand what I'm saying? Because it's representing our interests. So we get caught up, again, I think that we do need to have a left and right within a black political ideology. You next, Bobby, and then you, Steve. And we do need to develop it. We got to get in the business of selecting.
Okay, I think we've established that in order to make changes in our, each one of our communities, we have to take control of the political process.
Yes.
I think that's what we've established.
Right.
But what we fail to understand is that we don't control the political process. Money controls the political process. Corporations give money to the Democrats and they give it to the Republicans. And they give them that money, not because they're in love with them, because they will support their issues. So if you don't have $1 million and I don't have $1 million, we don't own the political process. The political process is owned by corporations. But prime example, the NRA, the National Rifle Association, with the gun killings, and so they will not change that because there's too much money being pumped to both sides. Now what they'll do is they'll get on TV and they'll give us a bunch of BS to give us the impression that they're fighting for our benefit. And that's all we get. We get words. We don't get change. So until we address the fact that we do not own the political process, we cannot change it. You cannot change anything that you don't know the origination of. You don't know the origination of politics. If you read the papers and you keep up with what's going on in the political world, every day there is a politician being indicted for some illegal action. Because that kind of job or that kind of politics attracts those kind of people. They see opportunity. And then when you fight back against it, they change the laws or they amend the laws to make it in their favor. So we don't control anything. So until we address that fact, all the conversations we have about change, if you don't talk about the money in politics, if you don't talk about our lack of control over politics, everything will be the same. We'll go around and continue to circle.
I agree. See, let me respond and then you're next. Let's talk about the assault weapon ban. Okay? I mean, that's a hot topic now, right? We know what the NRA is doing. We know the money behind it, right? We know that on a federal level, the Republicans run the House, Senate, and the presidency, right? We know the NRA primarily backs them and they grade them based on how they bargain. They grade Republican politicians, A, B, C, D, E, or F.
Democrats too.
Right, Democrats as well, on how they stand behind the positions of the NRA. But what I also know is they pumped $30 million
That was in one candidate.
in one candidate,
In one
in the Trump,
candidate.
right?
His name
So,
is,
here's the deal.
yeah.
In 2016, less than 50% of the American voting population voted in the election, right? So there was billions of dollars pumped into Donald Trump, right? Corporations do own the political process, but what they don't own is the people. What the people have done is checked out. It's back to checking out. In 2018, everyone knows that an off-year election, off-year general election, that Republicans vote and Democrats stay home. Happens every year, every off-season election. So if the people aren't voting, right, then yes, NRA does win. But if we got people to engage and we check back in, that money's not going to buy that election, in my opinion. That's been the ongoing. I think we get that in our heads, and some of us say, you understand the political process and how much money is in it, but yet you engage. How many of us hear that same thing and say, well, why do I even vote? I don't control it anyway. See, that's what that person is hearing, right? They're saying, why'd I vote? Ain't nothing gonna change. Money is corrupt. Money is the root of all of this, so why do anything? And therein lies the problem, is that when we have to change again how we speak to these things, right? Yes, money, there's a lot of money in politics, but I don't care how much money you put in it, if the masses of people rally, if these young folks in Florida and around the country that are be turning 18 this year and can vote by September, with the Me Too movement and with Democrats pissed off, and the Democrats take back the House and they take back the Senate, then gun legislation can happen. But it takes the people. And it's gonna be billions of dollars spent in 2018 to stop us from doing that. The thing is that it's like this fake news thing that's going on, right? Problem with fake news is they've been faking us out all along. If we don't take the time when we see something to research it ourselves, right? We see a picture, our statement on post on Facebook, and we run off to the races. Oh, yeah, this, and this, and it goes viral without taking the time to sit back and say, who's the source of this article? What is their political positions? I mean, Google's a wonderful thing. You can find out anything on anybody. Where did this come from? I mean, why? I'm not mad at the Russians. If your dumb ass, excuse my language, sat there and believed it, that's on us.
But that's part of the issue.
That's part of the issue. So it's the process is education, and that's why we need to have these down-to-earth conversations, one-on-one, to start saying, hey, we really don't understand the political process.
Yeah.
And we really don't, right? Some of us, like, this, Bobby's my guy. This is what we do, right? So we understand politics, but we also understand the mass of us that even that vote, hell, don't even know the judges you vote for. How many of you have voted for a judge on a ballot and don't know that judge position, and then wonder why all our brothers and sisters get locked up over some bullcrap, and don't have I mean, really, if it has a blue dot next to it, we just check it off and keep doing it. So how can we blame the judge? We don't even know who we voting for. And we wait till, it's not important to us until it comes time to vote. Then we want to pay attention. Now they can sell you a can of goods because you haven't been paying attention over the last year, 2 years, 4 years to what their policy positions are. Rubio just got up there and said something in front of those people in Florida that really was crazy. 2 years from now, people who weren't paying attention, he'll get up there and say he never said it, and everybody will believe him. That's the problem. Wait, Sister Steve is next. Go ahead, Steve.
What we really gotta understand is that it's all about cultural interests. Politics is cultural, meaning that one culture really can't govern another culture because there's too many different ideologies within the cultures. So if one is accustomed to eating greens and the other one's accustomed to eating, parsnips, how can one govern the other when, one needs this and one needs that? So it's all about the interest of the culture that is governed. And right here in America, we tend to not think that. We tend to think that, we got one interest for all. However, the reason why we get locked up and everything and all that is because you have one that is in power, that's governing for their interests of their people in order for their salvation. We thinking that when we get into their politics that it's going to work for us. However, it doesn't. That's why you got people like Kwame and everything getting locked up and everything when he tries to do the interest for his people, but he tries to do it their politics another cultural way. It doesn't match up. So when we get the idea of when we start to understand that we have to have cultural interests, and then we can start to politic within our own communities, such as a small community like this here in Lithonia, we can actually start to control the politics as far as what's going to be the best interest for us culturally. Because it's not going to, culture, you're not going to agree with every culture. You know what I'm saying? That's why you have the Chinese government, the Japanese government, whatever. You can't, just have one world government. Is because you have too many different ideologies that you can't govern.
You do,
One second.
and I'll get you, Pam, next. So, let's look at this. Let's look at the Asian community and the Jewish communities today, right? The Asian community and Jewish communities control the politics of their community inside this westernized politics, right? Let's look at, and let's look at the gay community. I mean, we'll talk from a political perspective. From just strictly from, I'm not talking about what they do, I'm talking about just strictly from a political perspective,
Politics.
right? From politics. 50 years ago, they started on this mission to change how these laws and this government view them. 50 years, they struggled, and they paid dues, and they came together and they started putting their money together, right? And whether we like the politics or not is beside the point. The point is that they took it upon themselves to create a space for themselves politically, right? And the roadmap, when you look at the roadmap, the political roadmap they took is brilliant. It's nothing less than brilliant when you took it. And see, the thing that we get caught up in is, yes, there's a U.S. government, there's a policy. They created they created these parties, they created these ideologies, and we get caught. And that's the premise of what I'm saying here. Is we get caught up from a political perspective of what they want, or we don't get involved in it because it's what they want.
Right.
Right? Either one, whether you get involved in it or you don't, we're still endorsing their political system that doesn't affect us until we create our own and start seriously thinking about it. We can't keep talking about how bad our communities are, and these young folks ain't doing this, and parents ain't doing that, and I can't open up a business, and I can't get loans from a bank. We can't keep talking about it if we're sitting back not engaging in the system, because it's all politics. Everything is politics. How the water's bottled, what you can drink, what they can sell in the store is politics. If a sister made juices, I can't bottle them up and sell them out here unless the FDC has signed off on it without violating the law. It's all politics. So we can't create an economy. We can't think black and buy black. We can do it, but we can't nation build. We can't, and I'm not saying follow the Asians or be like the Asians or be like the Jews, but they create a platform. They carved it out. You go in any Korean town or Chinese town in America, you got a Chinese bank, you got a Chinese business, and you can't go up in there and set up no business. You cannot go in their community and open up. I can't open a black bookstore in Chinatown. It ain't happening.
You can, they just ain't gonna support it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they ain't gonna support you. I will die. So why aren't we doing the same thing? If you want to put a liquor store, I got you. I think Pam is next. You want to open up a liquor store, we don't show up at the city council meeting when they want to put a liquor store in the community. So then they put a liquor store in the community, and next thing we talking about is, look at them Negroes out there hanging out in front of the liquor store. You knew that was going to happen before they opened it up. This is what I mean. We can't keep talking about what's wrong with the problem. My mother said one thing: when you point the finger at somebody, you got three fingers pointing back at yourself, right? So we can't continue to complain about what's not happening if we're not engaging in the system. And that's the thing that we have to learn. We don't have all the answers right now, but unless we're moving forward, in order to get answers, you have to move forward, right? I didn't know how this was going to happen, that you're sitting in today. Couldn't see it. But if I stood still, it would have never happened. Kept moving forward until that little light at the end of the tunnel became bigger. We have to move forward, and as we move forward, the answers, and we understand, but if we don't engage, if we keep making excuses, if we keep pointing the finger at each other, we're going to be having the same discussion that we had in 1895, we're going to have it in 2095. So it has to stop, and it has to stop with us. Pam?
I'd just like to speak to your original point about why we've checked out. I get to see it from a different angle because I'm a nurse manager at a Douglas County Youth Center, which is a detention facility for kids. So I get to view the whole thing from a healthcare perspective. And I'd like to piggyback off of what the gentleman said about it being at the cellular level. Well, what I see is a lot of our people are not engaged because they really are not psychologically capable of engaging. Right? Because he said the cellular level, I'm gonna go a little bit deeper. We are consuming things that affect us on a mitochondrial level. That is the nucleus of the cell. Okay, and that is what controls all of us essentially. That's the beginning of us. And we are taking mind-altering things, whether they are legal or illegal, that alter the way we process. And we're giving our children these things before they are even in the process of their development, okay? So if we start giving children things at 8 and 9 years old when they're about to cross over into puberty, etc., and begin to develop into an adult and learn how to think, you know, frontal lobe processing and frontal lobe processing and just the ability, what you have to do to know how to think rationally and not aggressively. We're giving our children these things that affect their frontal lobe, their behaviors. That is the part of the brain that affects the behavior. So if you are not able, if you are fundamentally altered in the beginning, how can you as an adult think rationally? You know, so we have to look at what we're allowing ourselves to receive. Us as a people with, I would say, African lineage are a very strong, resilient people. But I feel that there is a diabolical attack on us, and I'm just speaking from the healthcare side, to say that these things are good for us, these different kinds, and some are, just depending on what your healthcare status is. And understand, I have to say this because I do have 8 years of formal education in health, Western medicine, okay? But I see it from both sides. And probably 95% of it is not good for our mitochondria. And so therefore, we can't think. We can't figure out why won't she come to the teacher's conference? Why are our kids acting out? Why? Well, that's because we are being attacked on a mitochondrial level.
Good point. And in that, there's a political message as well, right?
Yes.
Because what the FTC and all these regulatory bodies, right?
Yes.
What they stamp,
Yes.
put their stamp of
Yes.
approval,
Yes.
right, on,
Yes. Yes.
that says it's safe,
That's not
right? That it's not like the aluminum that's in toothpaste,
Yes.
right? Now, the aluminum, there's a small amount of aluminum in toothpaste that's approved.
Yes.
But you put that aluminum in your system for 50 years,
Yes.
it accumulates, right?
Yes.
But there's a political message in that, right?
Absolutely.
So, there's a political message in Green Love Kitchen. This is what do you call it, a dry, what do you call it?
County for what?
When you don't have vegan or organic or healthy foods in a particular community. There's a term for it.
Dry pots.
Um,
Some people call it
I
dry
can't
pots.
I wish Javon was over here, but bringing that into this community, right, allows the community to begin to try to eat healthier.
Yes.
But we see it every day where they walk right by here. You know, Green Love Kitchen stays open because of the outer community,
Yes.
not because of the inner community, because we're not used to it. And I see it, you know, and my eating is not as healthy as it should be, but I see people come in there and they say, what's this? Oh, there ain't a burger, I can't get no ribs, and they leave. So we are being attacked on so many different levels
Yes.
that we have to we have to have a holistic attack. And that's why it's so important that we have warriors that's in healthcare. We have warriors that's in science, right? We have warriors that's in government. It's so important that we follow that passion, and then we don't just hold that information, because what we've been doing is holding all this information
Yes.
to ourselves, right? Instead of creating forums like this and others in our own local communities where we can say, okay, this is how we attack this is how we attack that, and then you build, again, a political ideology that, because they have a political ideology that covers everything,
Yes.
even the air quality, right? The air that you breathe, there's politics behind that, right? With pollution and emissions and all of that, we're not doing any of that on a very basic level. It may be okay for them to digest whatever they digest, and I don't know the science, but from what I know, that we digest things differently,
Yes.
differently,
Yes.
right? So everything is based on their worldview, right? So we have to create our own, and it's just, to me, I just think that we have to go beyond our basic understanding.
But we have to be aware. I'm
Pause, let's take a break.
We got, okay.
That's
I didn't even know that, for
Right.
example,
So,
like we,
this is-
on our side of town, we don't have advertisements over behind Panola Road Walmart. Don't nobody know about this. Except like probably, it's a group of people who built that playground. They probably know about it. And it took a lot to get even people to come and volunteer. Cause she was trying to get people from the Glenwood area to come out, because people in Lithonia weren't coming out, but they was complaining about that park, that old soccer field and stuff like that. So it's like literally, I think we have to come together because it's such a disconnect.
Let me tell you how easy it is to get some black folks together. It don't take a whole lot of money, a little money. Have a fish fry.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously. And I mean, some of us don't eat fried fish. I mean, some of us, but throw a fish fry and watch how many in the community come out, and then, because Steve, last year we had that fish fry out here.
Yeah.
I mean, did the community not come out?
Oh, they came out.
Oh, they came out.
Black bars.
They came out for that. But instead of it being just a party,
Educate.
it's an education process, right?
And
So I
give
mean,
food to you. Listen,
so imagine teachers and parents at a fish fry block party type of thing, right, with the children, and imagine healthcare professionals, right?
They used to do
That's
things like that.
engaging, huh?
They used to do things. When I
Yes.
was coming up, they did that.
Yes.
Bowie Elementary, we had a carnival every year. We had never had the problems where parents weren't coming, because they would bring the kids to the
Exactly.
carnival. They'd be like,
Exactly.
hey, why you here? Let me talk to you about what your child doing, because I got you right here.
Exactly.
So they got to start doing that again, because
Exactly.
it's like not a like with everybody moving into this area, especially what they're trying to do with Stonecrest. We about to have all these people coming over, taking over. Like people that had houses here for 20 years. Like we got to get it together.
We got to use the tools that we know, the tools that work for us, right? We know these tools. You know, let's stop trying to recreate the wheel. Get outside of our own bubbles, our own individual camps, right? Because what we have here, and this is a good time for me to, I'm coming to a point with this, with what this tree represents to me. It may represent something different to each and every single one of you. But what I see is each branch represents a different ideology within the black community, be it political, Republican, Democratic, independent, whatever your social economic status is, conscious community, all of the different branches, Muslims, Christians, African spirituality, atheists, all these branches represent us. And we always tend to lose sight that we're all still connected to this group. And what we've done is we've gone in our own, like this branch, we gone into our own little camp, and that's all we deal with, right? We're not, because we think differently than this, and we forget who we are. And we're never, that's the same divide and conquer. Destruction of Black Civilization, Chancellor Williams teaches you that right there. They've been using that same ploy on us for 2,000 years. Divide and conquer. Because I don't practice Christianity. You're not my brother or sister because you're a Christian. Come on now, for real? You know what I'm saying? For real? You're not my brother? Because I disagree? Or I came up in the, I'm from New Jersey, so we were more inclined to follow Malcolm X. Whereas if you was in Georgia, you might have been Martin Luther King. You know, I saw on Facebook people that, some people call people that follow Martin Luther King a coon. I mean, really?
Yeah, that's
I
the
mean,
case.
is that where we are now?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? We're so splintered in our ideologies that now you become the other. Like when I hear people talk about our children, I ain't talking about the ones that came out of your body. I'm talking about our children. When they say them children over there, or those ones over there, when we start to look at our own people as the other, because we disagree with either how they're raising their children or what their ideologies are, we've lost the game, right? Because we're all victims to some degree or another in this society, right? So how am I going to judge you because your victimhood is greater than mine at this point? You understand what I'm saying? And we have to get beyond that so we can start to come together at that fish fry, if you will, right? And we can find legitimate ways and means in order to get the parent to engage, right? Because you're right. If my mother took me to a place where my teacher was there, right, and I'd be scared to death. You know what I mean? So even mothers that don't go to I see them. They may not go to the PTA. They care about what their child is doing. They may just not care to go over there, right? Some of them are checked out, but I think a lot of them, they're mothers, right? So we gotta go back to doing things that help us come together. You know, we're gonna have to wrap this up. I wish this could go on forever, but we have to create ways, and we don't have all the answers. And elders gave me a boxing analogy that I like to state. 500 years ago, we got hit with a death blow. Didn't kill us, but it knocked us to the canvas, right? And as each generation, we start to stand up. You know, we're on that ground. So we're standing up now, but we still don't have full clarity. And if you know a boxer that's been dazed, what's that boxer doing? They're out of control, right? That's where we are now, right? Because we don't have clarity.
Yeah, we're not clear.
So we have to understand where we are and why we're there. That's important. But we also have to understand that it's those babies, right, that will have greater clarity than what we had. So it's about the babies. At this point, a 57-year-old man or woman who doesn't get it, it's a waste of time. Seriously. Why am I, argue with a fool, right? But it's about the children. And we need to focus, and we need to get to a point where we stop seeing everybody else's children and everybody else's children. And I'm going to finish with a little story, even though I said I wasn't going to do a story. One of my tailors, his name is Maktar, down in West End. And I used to go down there and hang out with him a lot. And I was in his shop one day, and the sister came in with 2 children. And he knew the sister, and he said, well, whose children are those? I forgot her name. She was from Kenya. He said, whose children they are? And she said, they're my children, Maktar. And he said, I thought you only had 1 child. And she looked at him as only sisters could look at us and say, you have lost your African ways. You know good and damn well that when a child is born, they're all of our children. And for the first time, Maktar's not one of those people who shuts up very easily, right? And always pushes back and always has something to say. For the first time, I saw him just shut it down because he realized he was losing his African ways. And that's where we are, right? That's exactly where we are. And that's the lesson to be gleaned from that, right? Is we got to go back to it. They're our children. It's not them children because they bad, because at the end of the day, those children are our future. When we're elders, we're gonna be relying on them. So we have to find ways to correct this. It is vitally important that we correct this. Each generation out of relative obscurity must fulfill its mission or betray it. Let's not betray ours. And at that point, I'll end, and I thank everyone for coming out. Thank you, Lex. Appreciate you. And let's get something to eat,
That ain't no
commute a little bit, and then we're gonna head back downtown.
You know, 8 minutes is in there.
Huh?
You always
Well, that's it, family. I'd like to say thank you for listening to the Urban Politician Show, and tune in next week at the same time, same place. Adobo.